18 years to cut those childhood deaths, and this is quite achievable. If we can expand vaccine coverage, if we can add malaria bed nets and drugs, and we can increase mother and child care, some of the things I spoke about, and take a few other realistic steps, we can reduce deaths of children to 5 million by 2025. But we can't do this, any of this, unless we end the old myths. And for that, we do need your help. This is the understanding that Bill and I ask you to promote, and that is spending on health and development works. We know it works, and we know we can save millions of lives if we keep it up. So we urge you to make this case and never get tired of talking about it. And especially for you Fulbright scholars, as Senator Fulbright said, it is impermissible not to work for a better future. Luckily, we don't have to be better human beings to build a better world. We just have to be who we already are, people capable of empathy, who see suffering, want to end it, and then we go out and just do it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to say personally, as someone who also works in philanthropy, it's especially inspirational to hear you speak, and I'm even more committed than ever, knowing how committed you are, and how important it is when you didn't have to do this, as Patty said earlier. Dr. Billington earlier referred to this as a day of some firsts, and I just want to repeat them and add another one. This is the first time we have Fulbright Prize laureates from the worlds of business and philanthropy. And as I said, since that's my field, I'm especially proud that we are honoring the world's greatest philanthropists today. They're also the first couple to be awarded the Fulbright Prize. And today, for the first time, we have visiting Fulbright Fellows from abroad who are going to take part in our program. So in order to do that, I invite Dr. Billington and Assistant Secretary Stock and Ms. Stonecipher to please take a seat in the front. Thank you. After receiving recommendations from the State Department and reviewing the Gates Foundation's broad interests, we have selected 5 Fulbright Fellows to pose a question to Mr. and Mrs. Gates about their work and aspirations. I'd like to introduce our 5 guests now. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Fulbright Fellow from Pakistan, Hadra Atiq. Fulbright Fellow from Ghana, Emmanuel Donkor. Fulbright Science and Technology Fellow from Colombia, John Alexis Gara Gomez. Fulbright Fellow from South Africa, Taile Yvonne Leswifi. And Fulbright Fellow from Afghanistan, Mustafa Mashal. Our first question is from Ms. Atiq.
Hi, I am a graduate student at the University of Vermont. I'm doing my master's in natural resources, and I would first like to congratulate the two of you for receiving this wonderful prize. My question is about the devastation caused by the floods in Pakistan, and many challenges of health, education, and resettlement are ahead. News from all around the world about aid efforts has been controversial and mixed. On a humanitarian level, I wanted to ask you, what would your message be to the world and to the decision makers, and your message of hope to the people in order for them to get back on their own feet and build a better future?
Well, I think Bill and I would say, so often in these disaster relief situations, they're horrific for all the people that are involved. And so, first of all, our hearts go out to everybody who's involved in this, and I think we've all seen on the news the incredible devastation. We have been involved in a couple of emergency relief grants, because I think one of the first things you have to do right away is try and help people get back on their feet. So we've done some grants through international organizations like International Relief Committee, or even the local Northwest government in Khyber Pass area. So I think people need to be able to try and rebuild their homes as quickly as they can, put a meal on their table, et cetera. But when you back up from that, I think the thing that the world really needs to do is to try and help in a place like Pakistan to build up the infrastructure ahead of time, which the Pakistani government has already been doing. But so that you do some of the things that Bill and I talked about. You make sure that the children have the vaccinations they can get to have a healthy life. Make sure we invest in agriculture so people have some means of lifting themselves out of poverty, as we see works in so many places in the world. And then really to build in the education, to have a great educational system. And I think that's one of the things that Senator Fulbright talked so eloquently was that how the power of educational force is slow moving, but it's one of the most important currents that's needed in a country and in international relations, so that people get themselves educated and can be citizens of the world. So I want to say that we certainly follow what's going on in Pakistan. We might even follow it even slightly more closely than another disaster relief area because of the polio issue there. Polio, as Bill said, we are on the last mile of eradicating polio off the face of the planet. And it's really only in 4 countries still: India, Pakistan, Nigeria, and Afghanistan. And so with Pakistan, the relief community is quite concerned about polio spread. We can't even really measure the polio cases right now because of the flooding. So we're there to help through the committees that are already on the ground and through the government. So,
thank you so much.
Thanks.
Now we'll proceed with a question from Mr. Donkor.
My name is Emmanuel Donko from Ghana. I'm studying for a PhD at the George Washington University. My field of interest is engineering management and systems engineering. My question to you this afternoon is this: if you had the opportunity to address water and sanitation policymakers in developing countries, what would you tell them and why?
All right, I'll take one more and then I'll let Bill. We get good at sharing. Well, first of all, I'd say we would be delighted to talk to world leaders about sanitation and health in the developing world. And in fact, this is a key theme that is on our minds a lot, and we are starting to talk a lot more about. You know so well from your studies that 2.5 billion people on the planet don't have access to any type of sanitation at all. That's about half of the people in the developing world with no access to sanitation. And when we look at some of the diseases we talked about, bringing down those childhood death rates, one of the biggest killers is diarrheal diseases. 1.6 million kids die every year from a diarrheal disease. We'll get about 500,000 of those deaths with a vaccine for something called rotavirus, but the rest of them have to do with sanitation. And so often when governments invest in clean water, they look at sanitation, but only about 10% of the resources of any government go into sanitation in the developing world. So we've got to talk to policymakers about bringing that number up, because clean water and sanitation go hand in hand. You can't do clean water and get at those diarrheal diseases. You have to do sanitation. We're particularly interested, and I'm sure you're studying some of this work as well, in what new inventions or innovations can come along in pit latrines, in all types of areas of sanitation, but in conjunction with social marketing. People really in a village, I've been in so many places in the developing world where someone came in and put in a latrine or a toilet, and the people don't use them. They reuse the materials for other things, because they can use the slab for the floor of their house, they can use the metal for the roof. They need the supplies, and they don't use them because they're not bought into the solution. And so you've got to get the village or the community bought into a plan of not having open defecation. And once they do that and they're invested and they decide what they want of the low-cost new innovations that are coming, then you can start to get social change. And that seems to be One of the things that goes hand in hand with the technological innovation is the social behavior change piece. Both of those have to get pushed by policymakers. So we're actually very enthused about this area. It's a new area of investment for us as a foundation, but one that we're so excited about that might not be the most popular dinner conversation for the places we go.
Great. Now we'll hear from Mr. Gara Gomez.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Alexis Guerra Gomez. I'm a Fulbright Science and Technology Fellow from Colombia. I'm studying a PhD in the University of Maryland at College Park. And my interests are in accessibility and information visualization. And I would like to hear today your thoughts about how you think that locally created technologies can help to bring equality to people with disabilities, and especially in developing countries like Colombia. And what do you think that can be done to offer resources and support to all of those agents of change that are trying to specifically implement those things in our countries?
When it comes to disabilities, I think it's valuable to break it down into the various categories, because then you can think about how do you prevent the disability from taking place, or how do you mitigate the negative effects that you have. Infectious disease is overwhelmingly the cause of most disability. Smallpox was the biggest cause of blindness. When you'd recover, you'd often be blind. Then after we got rid of smallpox, it was trachoma, and we've made big progress on that. Now it's actually cataracts, and although that's not an infectious disease, high volume, high quality surgery can be used against cataracts, and that's being done in a number of places in the world. Actually, India is one of the places where it first was done, and proven that a $40 operation could be done at as high a quality as the several $1,000 operation that had been done in the rich world. In all these diseases, if you have cerebral malaria as a kid, you are completely disabled in terms of ever learning, ever contributing. If you have asphyxia during the birth process, if you have growth restriction so that you can't get enough nutrition for your brain to grow during ages 0 through 3. So a huge part of it, thank goodness, actually goes back to these top dozen or so infectious diseases and getting rid of those. Even if you do all that, you'll still have some disabilities. And so there are things like cheap wheelchairs, cheap crutches. Engineers are being brought in to think creatively about how those designs are being done. A lot of U.S. universities are trying to draw on that kind of talent. Worldwide, there's a lot of prizes going on. For technology companies, they can come in. Microsoft's done a lot. I've been to one of the disability centers in Columbia where they have computers. People can come in and learn things, be trained for different type of jobs, because often that's a way of participating in society in a way that before that came along, it wasn't possible. There's a group in Spain that actually is very involved with the blind. They get all the lottery proceeds, and so they've worked with technology companies for the speech synthesis, speech input, getting everything to work well there. So there's quite a bit that can be done to mitigate as well as these prevention things. So you can look at the same type of curve we look at for deaths, look at it for the different areas of disability and say, okay, where is the failure? Where is the lack of research and development? What company could come in and do those things? But there are a lot of success stories that are taking place.
Thank you very much.
Our next question is from Ms. Lazwifi.
I'm a graduate student at Michigan Technological University. My field of study is in environmental engineering. My question is regarding the issue of global warming and environmental burdens due to large amount of carbon dioxide emissions. Is your foundation planning in investing on sustainable technology that do not have greenhouse gas emissions and that use renewable energy resources?
The energy market is a gigantic market and an absolutely critical market. The progress of civilization over the last 200 years is largely due to intense use of energy, starting with coal, then with oil, and then adding natural gas and a few other sources, but overwhelmingly those three. And that's why today the lifestyle of transport and medicine and heat and air conditioning, food delivery, all these things are utterly different for the